Welcome everyone to our weekly Dittofi webinar with Samuel and James from Dittofi and hosted by PronoCoders. We're going to get right into the presentation, but first, if you are looking to learn Dittofi, we have our Dittofi Bootcamp ready to go, and you can find that at pronocoders.com. Right up at the top, there's a link to our Dittofi Bootcamp page. So thank you everyone for being here. Today we're going to talk about I think the topic of today is the modules marketplace and Dittofi, which is just getting up and running. And I'm excited to hear all about it from James and Samuel. So welcome.
Thank you, Tanya. Yeah, so that's 100% right. Today we're going to be talking about the modules marketplace. So what we've done is we've built out this marketplace of modules, which I'll go into what those are in a minute. And we've sort of tried to put it in the context of a toolkit that we developed over the last few weeks with PronoCoders on these live courses, showing people how to set up things like Stripe, their CRM, their analytics around their product, so you can track like usage and so on, as well as the OpenAI integration that we did last week. So what I'm going to do is just give a background to what modules are and the ones that are there at the moment. And also how we can, or how we're looking to expand this modules marketplace and some opportunities there to build and sell your own modules in our marketplace that will be coming up on the horizon in the next few months. And then I'm going to flip over to Samuel, and he's actually going to walk through some examples of installing these different modules so that you can get sort of, this functionality within your apps really, really fast. So the first thing then to talk about is that we this week we released our modules marketplace. So what exactly is a module? Well, a module is I was trying to think of ways to explain this to people, but what we essentially have are that modules are a set of backend services that you can take and install into your application. So you might have, for example, a bunch of different APIs that you want to connect to. You can take, if those modules that exist within the marketplace, you're able to take those API installations directly off the shelf, install them into your app to extend the functionality of your application. We also have this week released our templates marketplace in a bit more force. And there are a few templates in there now, which will enable you to take the front-end UI toolkits, as well as back-end back-end only and full-stack applications, and just install those directly in your application. So we have listed in the templates marketplace at the moment as well, like the LMS template that we've been building over the last few weeks. So you can literally take that LMS and install it into your application for free. There's also a CRM that's there as well, with around 80 or so backend endpoints. And then PronoCoders have listed the one of the applications that they've developed so far, which is also being used in the bootcamp trainings. And so, lots of different, two main different marketplaces, but the one we're talking about today will be the modules marketplace, which is these list of backend services. So the startup no-code CTO's toolkit. So these are the first four modules that we've included in the marketplace at the moment. So these are the things that we also developed over the last, 4 weeks with this no-code nights, PronoCoders Dittofi workshops that we've been running. So in the previous sessions we've shown exactly how to set these up from the ground up, reading the API documentation, and then also building the backend web services. Now, we've taken all that configuration that we did, and we've allowed you not just to take that configuration and install it directly. All of the modules are completely customizable. So, of course, we only integrated certain endpoints from each of the different APIs, but you can actually take the installation and then extend the module further if you want to increase the number of endpoints that you're talking to in each of these different cases. And we're calling it the Startup No-Code CTO Toolkit because we think that these tools are things that all startups will need in their sort of armory So the ability to take payments through Stripe, the ability to create flywheels using HubSpot. So when people log into the platform, send off those automated emails that we talked about in previous sessions so that you can engage with your user base. And then also mixed panel so that you're able to define that tiered data strategy in order to understand exactly how users are interacting with your products. And I think we have those three recordings live on the ProNoCoders website as well if you want to go back and watch any of those. And then the OpenAI integration was there to try and improve that user experience within the platform. We noticed that a lot of people now wanting to use generative AI to produce like little snippets of text, maybe for things like property descriptions on two-sided marketplaces, or in their, let's say in the EdTech app we made, generating the text for the different courses that are being listed on the system, just by providing a prompt. So we think that these are interesting tools for people who are starting out as startups and want to build an application. Of course, in all of the different cases, you can include any other type of module in that you want to have as well. So the module marketplace itself is actually extendable. So this is what's sort of coming soon on the horizon for the modules marketplace. You're actually today able to take bits of configuration that you have, and you're able to list those modules in the marketplace. But when you list the modules in the marketplace, you have a choice whether you want to open source them for the entire community, or whether or not you want to just keep them and share them just with your own accounts. So this can be kind of like useful if you want to, if you're developing maybe the same set of functionality multiple times for different applications. You can actually save that configuration down now, put it into your own like private modules market section of the modules marketplace, and then you're able to install those modules in future application builds. So in addition to the ones we have there, you can also add your own. And then in the next 2 months, we're going to offer the option to also sell your own modules in the marketplace. And the way that we're organizing this at the moment is we're creating 2 different pricing methods that you can actually sell these modules through. So you'll be able to sell them either as on a monthly recurring basis. So you'll be able to provide a subscription for people that want to use your module at a slightly, let's say, lower price, or you can allow people to do a slightly higher price for a one-off purchase where they pay just once, and then they can install the module just for that one-time usage only. So the plan is to release another set of modules in the coming weeks with ProNoCoders. And when we do that, that will be kind of like the next wave of modules that we produce. But in addition to that, in the next 2 months, so at the end of June, the start of July, we'll actually do another session where we'll open this up entirely, so you can actually see how you can list your own modules and start to make money by selling those within the marketplace itself. So that's everything from me at the moment. I hope it was all clear. And now I'm going to flip over to Samuel, and he's going to show you how you can take these modules and install them into your applications so that you can get that speed up in your app development. So Samuel, I'm going to flip over to you now, if that's okay.
Yep. I'm just going to take over the screen share.
Sure.
And bring up my screen here. So when I first log into the app, I'm going to come to obviously my workspaces screen here, where I can see all my different apps. And if I click into the templates tab up here, then I'll have a list of templates, including the learning management system one that we built in some of the in the previous sessions. And here you'll see in the top right, you've got a little toggle to flip between apps and modules. So as James said, an app is a full app that you're going to be installing. So this will be the full like learning management system that we've been building out, for example. Whereas a module, if I click on this, it will filter it down for just modules. A module is just a pre-built bit of functionality that you can incorporate into an existing app. So when you go to install one of these, you'll see it ask you to kind of create a new app and put it in a workspace. Whereas when you go to install a module, it's just going to ask you which app do you actually want to use this in, so it can be put into an existing app. So I've created one called demo that I'm just going to select and then just click install. This will install the module and it will pull you into the app as well. So I'm now in my demo app. The first screen you'll see once you've installed it is this dependent apps screen. And this you can navigate to independently if you click on this little icon down here, and you'll see dependent apps down there. So this page will show you every module that you've actually installed. And if for some reason you install one and you don't actually want to use it, then you can come and just click the little bin or trash can icon here to delete it, or click in here and just click delete. When your module installs, it's going to give you a couple of things, which I'm going to show you now. So first off, if you go to this actions page here and come in and create a new action, I'm just going to call this one test module. I'm just going to add a trigger as endpoint. So now I'm in a regular action. I've created plenty of these in the past. And I'm just going to add an event to this. And I'm going to go to the event type section, go to flow control and pick the run action event here. So if you don't know already, the run action event can be used to run other actions that you've created in your app. So for example, if I click out of here, I've got one called test module. If I come back, test module, that was the one we're working on. I've got another one called testing. So if I click into the test module one and go run action, and I look here, I can see my testing action down here. So this allows me to actually run the testing action that I created, but from within inside this test module action. So that's one of the main purposes of this run action event. It allows you to run other actions in the same that you've created, but from within a different action. The other thing you can use it for, though, is once you've installed these modules or these dependent apps, you'll see you've got a little drop-down option here, and I can come and I can select the app that I want to run the action from, and I'll then see the actions from that different app. So in this module that I've installed, I've got a action called create chat completion. So I can now go and just select that. And that's going to allow me to run this action that's already been built somewhere else, but from within my app. So more, if we're thinking about what a module actually is, James said it's allowed you to kind of do backend services. That's true. Another way of thinking of it is it's literally just another action, but it's an action that's been created in a different app. So you don't need to worry about actually building the action yourself. It's already been created and you can just run that action from within your app. When you go to run an action, you'll see that there are a bunch of parameters that come up that you need to fill in here. And these are the bits of information that this action actually needs in order to function. So when you're using the OpenAI module, this is going to ask you, for example, to pass it in a secret key, which is a token which identifies that you're the person actually connecting to OpenAI. This is an example of some bit of information that this action needs, and it's going to ask you to pass it in. So when using these modules in general, you're going to come here, pick the run action event type. You're going to select the app that you've installed or the module that you've installed. And then you're going to have to go and fill in these parameters which that particular action needs. So the main thing to understand about each of the modules and each of the actions within those modules is what these parameters actually mean. And I believe there will be, or there already is, videos attached to this OpenAI one, kind of talking you through that and getting added to the other modules as well. So for now, if we're working, let's say to begin with this OpenAI one here, the purpose of this module is to connect to the OpenAI system and allow you to do things like generate text based off specific questions that you ask. So the way the making use of technology that you see when you use apps like ChatGPT, you can come in, ask a question, and you'll get some response back. So what we need to do to use this is we need to pass it in a secret key, and we need to pass it in a question which comes in the form of a list of messages. So what I'm going to do is I've already added under my global variables section here something called OpenAI key, and this is my secret key that allows me to connect to OpenAI. If you don't know where to find that, I'll just show you very quickly. I can go to openai.com, go to the developer section, documentation. That's developers documentation. And then once you've actually signed in, underneath view API keys over here, you're going to see your secret keys, or you can create one if you haven't got one already from the screen here. So you can click in here. Actually, I haven't got one. Then you can do create new secret key. I don't want to share mine, so I've already created it and put it in here. So what I did was just came in, did add variable, did a text variable, did OpenAI key as the name, and then I copied and pasted in the key that I got from here. Which you'll see actually, if you don't see one, you can click this create key and you can just create a key and then you'll get something here. So you could just copy this and paste this in as your text value, for example. And then save it. That's all you have to do there. I've already done that, so I've got a different key saved in here. Won't be sharing. And then the third parameter down is this model parameter, and this is defining how the OpenAI system is going to work. So there are different ways that the AI can basically answer your questions, and those are based on what they call models, and you can read more about that on their website. But for now, what I would do is, again, come to this global variables section, add one called OpenAI model, and then you can paste in here a model. You can use this one, you'll see here. And again, if I come to the documentation and click into models, you'll see other models that you can use kind of listed down here. Actually, documentation models, here we go. And you'll see, for example, this one here that I'm referencing. There's a whole bunch of different ones that you can use. So you could try changing between them. But for this one, I'm just going to use this particular model here. So I can now do secret key. It's going to be my OpenAI key. It's going to pass that in. My model, which is here. And then the last thing I need to pass in is the actual messages that I'm going to be sending to this system. So for that, I'm just going to create a variable up here, which I'm going to call messages. And I'm going to make this a collection of custom models. So pause for a second here. I said at the start, there's a couple of things that happen when you install your module. The first is it installs all of these actions for you that you can run. It will also create custom models for you that you can use in those actions. So if I click on this custom model section now, you'll see I'll have a model called OpenAI chat message. So this was installed from my module. So I can just select this one here, do save, and then I can use that as my parameter here and save down like so. So now that's configured to run the action from the OpenAI module. It's going to pass in my secret key that I've generated. It's going to pass in this particular model parameter, and it's going to pass in a list of messages. When I create this list of messages here, originally this is going to be an empty list. So what I can do is I can add a new variable here, which will be a single custom model, and I can do message and just call this one message. This is the single model. And then before I send this list of messages to the OpenAI system, I can just use the append event and say, I want to append my single message to this list of messages. And the reason for this is this accepts a list of messages rather than just one single one. So I want to create a list and just add one single one to it. If I wanted to send multiple ones, then I could add multiple messages and append them all to this messages collection and then send it. But in my use case, I just want to send one. Then before that, I want to add one more event, which is going to be my assign event. And in this one, I can actually assign values to this message, this single message that I've created. So before adding it to my list of messages, I'm going to assign values to it. You'll see, again, this asks you to assign a role and a content. You'll see that when you come here and do message role, message content. So the content is going to be the actual question that you're asking the AI, and the role, again, is some kind of internal value, which you can read about in the documentation here as well. But for now, for the role, again, I would come to your global variables section and create one called OpenAI role, and I'm just going to use this user role. There are different roles which do slightly different things, but as a default, we'll just create this variable here and give it the value of user. So I can then use role user and remove that for 1 second and save. In my case, I want to be able to send questions to this system. So to do that, I'm going to send that question to my action. So if I want to input some dynamic information into my action, I can go to the trigger section here and I can add a variable at the bottom, which I can call question. And once I add that variable at the bottom, when I click to run my action, I can type in some dynamic question here. So now if I come back to my assign event and I do add variable, message content, I can then use that dynamic question that I'm sending and save. So this is now set up so that when I actually run this, I can send my question and pass that all into this module, which is going to do the actual kind of processing of all of like the backend service related stuff that we kind of built up manually in the other tutorial. So actually kind of connecting to the AI system and so on. And actually the last thing I'm going to do is under this response variable here, I'm going to take the what's called the return variable here. One thing I did not mention, when you run this action here, you'll see this asks you to put in some information like we discussed, but also at the bottom, you can see it returns you some information as well. So you have the input variables that you're passing into the action, and then you've got these return variables that are getting passed out of the action. So the return variable in this case will be the response from the AI, and you can then take that return variable and you can use it elsewhere in your action, or you can just return it as the response variable down here. So let's just come in here a second and run this. and we get this response back. So we put in hello, and now it says like, hello there, how can I assist you, and so on. So now you can come in and add more questions and so on. So this is the kind of back-end part that we set up. Just to recap very quickly, we installed the dependent app here. When we installed this, it installed a bunch of actions that we could use, and it also installed these custom models that we can use. And then we've just used that in our action here. This is how all of the modules are going to work. And on the templates page for each of those modules, you can see kind of what actions are available and learn about how to configure them. What I'm going to show now very quickly, just to complete this example. Once you've built this back-end part up, how you can then take that and use it elsewhere in your app. So in the front end part of your app as well. So if I come to the front end builder now, and it's got a blank screen, and what I'm going to do is just to show you this. If I come into the chat GPT tool, I'm just going to copy the layout of this from here just to quickly create some template page. If you copy stuff from another website, obviously you can't release it yourself, but just for the purpose of this demo, so you can come and paste that in here. And then if I come and have a look in this side panel here, I should be able to find, let's see, something to actually style this. I think will be this here probably. Let's see if we do. Then come to my pages section, edit page settings, and then under imports, I can come and do add import. Need these, do I? Let's try this. Yeah, and then it will kind of start my page for me. That gives me just a quick default page that I can use. I'm just going to delete some of this stuff that I don't really want. Move this out of the way. So let's just delete these boxes up here. I don't know what this empty box here is, so I'm just going to leave that. And then down here, I've got this messages section, and this box here. I don't know if I want that or not, but I'll just leave that for now. Now we've got some basic layout. So the last part of this isn't necessarily related to the module so much. We've kind of set that part up. What we want to do now is just integrate our front end with that. So I can just come here, do front end action. I'm going to do a new front end action, which I'm going to call generate description. I'm going to come back here. For now, actually, I'm just going to, let's say, add a button to this, just so I can actually, so I can actually run this. So we just change these to divs. And let's grab a button from here. And let's try and just put this underneath. There we go. This can be, say, ask question or whatever. And when I click on this button here, I'm going to say on click, and then I'm going to do generate description. So it's going to run that front end action when I click on this button. So what I want to do in this front end action then is just run this back end action that we set up. And I want to pass it in a question that I'm going to get from my text area here. So to do this, I'm going to add a variable, which I can just call question, which is just going to be a regular text variable. I can just save that, and that will create my question variable. And I can attach that question variable to this text input. That means when I start typing in this text input, it's going to take whatever I've typed and store it in this question variable. Then I'm going to add one more variable, which I'll just call maybe response. And this is going to be a collection of custom models again. And this is going to be the another custom model that was installed with our module. This is going to be the chat completion choice. So if you look at the response that you get back when you run this, you get back this big object here, and there's this section here marked choices, which is a list of kind of answers to the question. And this is under the custom model chat completion choice. So I can just select that one here and then do save. So what I can do now is if I come to my front end action, click on generate description, I can do add event, run endpoints. I can pick my test module, one that we created. It's expecting a question, so I can come here and select that question variable that I added. And then I can just fill in the response and the response code names. And then I can just add an event after this. And in this event, I can use the set field event, and I can find my response variable that we just made. And I can say I want to give this the choices that are returned from my action when I run it. So that sets up the action. And then the very last thing, if I click on this div block here, maybe I could add, let's say, actually a paragraph element inside this. I can click on my paragraph and I want to say I'm going to repeat this with the response that I get back. And then for the text, I'm going to display the message content like so. So I'm going to repeat my paragraph down the screen, and I'm going to display the content inside there. A couple of small things to note. Currently, when you import a screen like this, if you've got SVG icons on there, we don't support that at the moment, so you need to switch these for images. But for now, just to do this quickly, I'm just going to delete these SVGs that I can see, so we don't run into any problems with styling. And then I think I'm just going to try building this and see what happens. So hopefully when we click on this button here, it should trigger the generate description front-end action to run. This should then hopefully trigger the backend test module one that we just made. And this should then do all that stuff that we discussed and return some response. So let's just preview this a second. We get our page up, which is good. And then let's just, I'm sure let's type into this now. We'll just do hello again. So when I click the button, we can see that runs. Okay, yeah, and then we get our response. Whatever. So this shows you, yeah, end-to-end example of how you can integrate a module into your app and then use it on both the back end and the front end. So the main things said you need to understand are going to be what the input parameters are for your action that you're running, and then need to understand what's getting returned, and understand a bit kind of what custom models are getting installed within your app. But for now, I'm just going to switch to a new tab here. Click out this one. And I'm just going to talk through the other modules and show you how I have gone to refactor the LMS system that we've been building in the previous sessions to essentially incorporate those. So if I click into my LMS now, and let's exit out of here. So in the previous week, we set up something similar to this here, where we could generate descriptions for our courses. And we did that using a kind of web service that showed building in here. So first off, I've deleted that web service. And then in our generate course description, you'll see this has been changed to actually just use the same run action that we used in that demo that I just showed you there. So I won't talk through this one again. That was the first small change. We also integrated HubSpot and Mixpanel. So I'm going to show you now how those can be done. And again, we integrated those in a bit more of a manual way. But I'm going to show you now how you can do this a lot faster and a lot easier using these modules again. So if I come and check out the sign up action, our sign up action, there was quite a few things we were doing in it in the end. So this happens when we just preview this app quickly. When we click on this sign up button here, you enter in your details or whatever, submit them. This is then going to run this sign up action here. And there was a bunch of things that we wanted to do. We wanted to create a user in our users table, log the user in. Then I also wanted to write my user into HubSpot so that I had a record of them stored in my CRM. I also wanted to send a message to Mixpanel. Mixpanel was the system that we were using to store event-based data on our app. So store a log of every time a user interacted with our app. So what I can do now is, again, I can come to the, into the modules section here, and you'll see those integrations listed out here. So I can click into, for example, the HubSpot or Mixpanel one here. And again, just do use template, pick this LMS one that we had here, in fact, LMS2 one, and install those in there. Again, once you install them, it's going to bring you into this dependent app screen here. You can see a list of the different apps that have been installed. So I've got the AI one already that I showed you, also installed already HubSpot and Stripe, and then the Mixpanel one added. I can then come back up, go to my sign up one, and I can then use, if I click into this first one here for the HubSpot integration, I can use the run action event again. So under flow control, run action, I can then pick the HubSpot module, HubSpot app, and then I can choose from it one of its actions. So I can pick the create contact action. So this action is going to create a contact for me in HubSpot. In this case, it asks me for a bunch of parameters. I think these are a bit more self-explanatory than the AI ones. It asks you for things like the first name, last name, and so on of the contact that you're creating. So that's just the information about the user that has signed up to your app. In this case, our users are typing in their information in the sign-up form and then clicking this submit button here. So what we would do is, if you watch back some of the earlier videos on this LMS build, you'll see that we have a bunch of query variables here for like first name, last name, and email. So these are getting sent from our front-end form to our action via these query variables here. So I can take that information, put it into my users table to actually create a user in my users table that I've got here. But after that, I can then go and use this run action event here in order to actually create that contact in HubSpot using the installed module. So I can take the first name, last name, and so on that I passed into my action and send that off. And then the last thing you'll also need, and you'll need this for most of these integrations, is some sort of secret key. So again, I would come to the global variable section here and store your keys here. And I've created one called HubSpot token, which again, I won't show you what that is. But this will be the secret key that I got when I set up my HubSpot account. And I can then use that HubSpot token as my secret key. So that's really the input variables for that. User data, and then some secret token. And then this is going to return you some information about the contact you've just created. So HubSpot will give a ID to every user that you create in the system. And that will be included in this return variable here. You may or may not want to actually use that information. Probably you don't really need to. So that's the only parameters that you need for the HubSpot one. And then for the Mixpanel one, if I just click down here again, this one. The purpose of Mixpanel, if you missed that series, is to basically store information about what your users are doing within your app. So every time someone signs up to your app, you might want to create a log of that somewhere so you can look back and see how many times people have signed up to your app in the last X number of days and so on. Or every time someone goes and performs any bit of functionality, you might want to keep track of that. And you can use Mixpanel to do that. Again, in the previous sessions, we kind of walked through a manual integration of this. But in this case now, I've just installed this module here. When I install that, I can then, again, use the run action event. And I can pick an action then from this other application, this Mixpanel one here. So I pick the create Mixpanel event one. And I can then come and fill in the inputs for that action in order to use it. So for the Mixpanel one, the information you need, again, you're going to need some secret tokens and so on. These are a bit harder to find, so I'm just going to show you really quickly. If I go into mixpanel.com. This is just my test one here. Underneath settings, if you go to project settings, first off, you'll see you've got like a project ID up here. So you're going to need that. You'll see you've got project ID as one of the inputs. And then the other two kind of keys you need are this username and this secret here. And you can get those by going to the service accounts section here. And if you haven't got one, you can just click add service account, which will create a service account. And when you create that, it's going to give you a username, and you'll also see a secret key pop up. So you can just click add service account. Same thing, do add, and then you'll see your key afterwards. So you can take that secret, that username, and the project ID. And again, I would come to your global variables section here. And I've added these already, but I'd come and add project ID, service account secret, service account username as global variables. So these are just going to be text variables. So you'd have something like, let's see, Mixpanel project ID, and you can just input your project ID here as a text variable. Once you've input those, you can then come and use those here. Then the other things you need to give it are you need to give it a, what they call it, insert ID. So the insert ID is a unique string which identifies this particular event that you're making in Mixpanel. And the point of this is if you put the same string in, the same unique string in twice, it will just overwrite the previous event. So you might want to use this if you want to update previous events that have taken place, then you might want to use some kind of deterministic insert ID. If you don't care, you can just use the about updating. Then if you don't care about updating, you can just use the UUID variable type here. And this will generate a unique ID for you, which you can just use as your insert ID. In that case, you won't be able to really go back and update anything because you won't know what that unique ID is that you've used. If you use something more deterministic, then maybe you can find out a way to go back in time and update things. But normally you don't need to do that anyway. So I'd probably recommend just using this UUID here and using that and just creating a variable here and using that as your insert ID. Then the last thing you need is the events. So the events, again, it's similar to the AI one. This expects you to pass in a list of information, and it expects, in this case, a list of events. And these events are the actual events that you want to store, or that you want to notify Mixpanel about that have taken place. So in our case, there's only really one event. It's this sign up event that's just taken place. So I want to send to Mixpanel to say someone has just signed up to my app. So that's the point of this events variable here. So for the events, we're going to do something similar to the AI one that we walked through at the start. We're going to create an collection, so a list of events. And in this case, you'll see that when you install this module, you get the Mixpanel event installed along with the action. So our list of events, we're going to use this Mixpanel event. And then similar to the other one, we're just going to create a custom model as well, just a single custom model, which I'll just call event. And again, that's going to be of type Mixpanel event. Then we're going to have an append event to take that single event and append it to our list of events. And then we're going to send that list of events off to Mixpanel. Before sending that list of events off, we've appended the single event. And before appending that single event, we also want to assign any values to that single event. So when I click on the assign option and go to assign values for the event, it's going to ask me for three things. It's going to ask me for the actual event. So this is the identifier of your event. So if I go into Mixpanel and I look under my event section, you can see when I was testing this 7 hours ago, I created an event and it's called sign up. So under here, this event, I've created a global variable called Mixpanel event sign up. And this just stores the value sign up. That's why we see sign up here. Then again, it's going to ask you for an insert ID, which again can be a unique ID that you send off. And then it's also going to ask for a distinct ID. And this is a ID which can represent the ID of the user that's actually performing this event. So if you use the user ID for your distinct ID, or actually maybe you want to use the email, I think that would work too. This will then associate all of these sign-up events with that particular user that's actually signed up. So that way you can group your events by user. So you can see how many users have signed up, for example. You can see which users have done what, and so on. That's the purpose of this distinct ID here. So that's the parameters for the Mixpanel and the HubSpot one. And then just very quickly, if I look under my purchase course one here, you'll see, again, earlier one, we kind of set up a manual Stripe integration. what I've done now is I've taken this module that I've installed for Stripe, and I've selected run action, picked Stripe, and then I've picked the create checkout session action. This will create my checkout page to actually make a payment in Stripe. And if I scroll down, you'll see this asks, in this case, actually for just 2 parameters. It asks for a secret key again, and it asks for checkout session parameters. So this is the information that I'm sending to Stripe about the payment that I'm going to be making. So again, when I installed this module, as well as giving me this action, it also installed some custom models for me. And I need to assign information to those models and send them off to Stripe. So the main one that I need to send is this checkout session parameter here. So you can see I've created a custom model up here called Stripe checkout session params, short for parameters. And that is what I'm then sending off to Stripe. Before actually sending that, I need to assign some information to it. So again, I'm going to use these assign events in order to assign information to that checkout session parameter. And then the other thing I need, again, as with all the other modules, is some kind of secret key. So this is the key that belongs to my Stripe account. And it essentially identifies, same as the other ones, that it's my account that's actually performing this action. So when the payment's made, it goes to my account and not someone else's, obviously. So secret key we'll get from the Stripe dashboard, and that's quite easy to find. I won't show that now just because I'll have my own private key in there. But if you search for Stripe secret key online, then you'll see lots of examples of where to find that. And then in terms of the checkout session parameters, if I come and take a look at this checkout session parameters here, this asks me for a bunch of details. So ask me for a success URL, cancel URL, and a mode. So when I run this particular action, it's going to create a Stripe checkout page for me that I can then go and fill in my bank details with. And when I complete that and make my payment, it's going to redirect me to some URL. And that's what this checkout success URL is all about here. And if I cancel my payment halfway through, it's also going to redirect me to my URL. So that's what this cancel URL is here. When I make the payment can be a one-off payment or it can be a subscription payment. And we can define that by setting the Stripe payment mode. So if I check under my global variables section, I've just created cancel URL, success URL here. And then I think I've also created a payment mode. So you can see for my cancel URL, I'm just using the URL of my app. So this app here that we're running. And the same for my success one. And then for the payment mode, I've just used the expression payment, which allows me to make a one-off payment. As I said, you could enter in subscription there, and then you could have a recurring payment instead. So that's what you need to assign on the checkout session parameters. Then if you look at this last event here, your checkout session parameters also contain a list of line items, which are a list of the things that you're going to be actually purchasing. And that list of line items can contain this other custom model that got installed, which is this checkout session line item parameter, which I've added up here. So the last thing you need to do is create one of these checkout session line item parameters, and you just need to assign information to that So if I just click into here quickly, this is a bit more self-explanatory. You just need to assign things like a quantity, so how much you're purchasing, a description, and then assign information about what the price should be. I think we're coming towards the end though. We're going to do a slightly longer one on the Stripe and post it up, I think. Is that right, James? So you can watch that for a bit more detail.
Yeah. So we're going to take all of the stuff that Samuel's been through today. We've started putting that into videos in the background. So the goal is by the end of today to release the first part of the OpenAI one, and then over the next week or so, we'll just do posts probably every other day, just to push up the rest of the things, showing you how to configure these modules slower. And I think Tonya will probably make this whole video available at the end of this session in any case, or a few hours afterwards, I guess, after it's finished processing. So yeah, as we're coming up to the end, I had one question that I wanted to ask Samuel. I didn't see anyone post anything in the chat yet, but if anyone else has any questions, they can drop them in the chat now. My question for you, Samuel, was about, in terms of like so plugins or modules generally have a bad rep, I would say, because people will say that, WordPress plugins, they slow down the websites massively. Is there any performance impact on the applications by installing these modules?
That's a good question. Not a pre-canned question, surprisingly. That's just quite, this is quite interesting. So the way these modules work, if you're interested in the back end of our system, is there, if I just click out of here a second and let me just look for a small one that's been made. This is the start of the mix panel one here that I was showing, but a kind of earlier version that's got a bit less in it. That's just one action, this one here. This is the actual module itself, and this is just literally just another app almost. And in that app, you've got some action that's being created, which can then be run from a different app. As with any regular app, you can click the view code button down here and see the actual code that's being generated for it. This is the same kind of code that's getting generated for your main app that you're building. It's just Google Go code. And the way these get installed is they're essentially, if you're familiar with Go, you can Google this a bit more as well. They're packages that get installed within your main application. So whenever you're building an app in Go, you always install a whole bunch of packages. When building your code, you can see that even when you click this. Okay, not there. If I click this view code button here, see, yeah, you'll see at the top of any kind of Go file, something like this, where you've got a bunch of imports. They're importing different packages. Some of these will be kind of Go standard libraries. I guess this strings one and this net one here. And some of them will be packages that people have put up online. So I guess these ones here are. And your modules that you install, they are released as packages and they're installed in exactly the same way. So in this one here, you can actually see we've got 2 imports. And these are the imports for the modules actually that we've just installed. So in other words, this is identical to how you would build like a normal Go application. So in terms of performance, it should make 0 difference. Is the answer, the short answer.